Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are getting into one of the most foundational and frankly unnerving stories in
Right.
in all of literature.
Hmm.
We're talking about Abraham, his sons Isaac and Ishmael, and the really shocking events in Genesis chapters 20 through 22.
Right.
And this is so much more than just some ancient sibling rivalry. It's really a high-stakes look into how faith is formed, how promises are tested, and why, waiting is often the hardest part.
That's absolutely it. And for this one, we've pulled together a pretty dense stack of sources, everything from detailed study guides to psychological readings, even the New Testament's allegorical take on the whole saga.
So what's our mission today?
I think our mission is to move beyond the Sunday school version of this.
Yeah.
We want to unpack the profound, almost dizzying tension between a divine promise on one hand and the messy, sometimes disastrous reality of human effort on the other.
Right.
We're trying to figure out why these ancient stories are still considered the bedrock for huge concepts like faith, sacrifice, and covenant.
And the thing that just sets the stage for all this drama is the timeline, the sheer amount of waiting.
Oh, yeah.
You have Abraham and Sarah getting a promise that they then wait for 25 years. Just think about that. The sustained hope, the doubt, the failed human attempts to kind of force God's hand.
And then when the miracle finally happens,
Yeah.
when Isaac, the son of the promise, is in their arms, God immediately issues the ultimate unimaginable test.
The pivot is just instant, from miraculous fulfillment to this terrifying sacrifice.
It's the whiplash of faith that really defines the whole narrative.
So let's start there. Let's anchor ourselves in that quarter century of waiting. Our sources say Abraham was 75 years old when he first gets this
All
promise.
right, 75.
And he's 100 when Isaac is finally born, a full centenarian. And Sarah was 90.
In that long wait, it's not some biblical oversight. It is the point. The material we looked at really emphasizes this idea that God's delay is awesome for his display.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, if Isaac had been born when Abraham was, say, 76, it would have been a natural birth, just a late one. But God deliberately waited until they were both, as the text says, well past their prime.
Until it was biologically impossible.
Exactly. So when Isaac does appear, there's just zero ambiguity. This isn't biology. It's a supernatural act, a divine signature.
And that's all captured in the child's name, isn't it, Isaac? It means laughter.
It does, which is such a powerful word choice.
Where did that name come from? It feels almost ironic.
Well, initially that laughter was all about skepticism. When Abraham, at 99 years old, first hears he'll have a son, he laughs in disbelief.
And Sarah does too, right?
She does. She's eavesdropping and just laughs,
Yeah.
thinking it's absurd for a 9-year-old woman to conceive. But the fulfillment of the promise turns that laughter of doubt into, pure joy.
So every time they call their son's name, it's a reminder.
It's a reminder of that pivot from human doubt to divine delight. It also officially seals him as the heir to the covenant, because Abraham had tried to solve this inheritance problem on his own.
Right. First with his steward Eliezer, and then, much more significantly, with Ishmael.
And God just flatly rejected those human-devised shortcuts. The covenant had to be fulfilled miraculously through Sarah. Isaac's birth confirmed he was the son that God had willed.
Okay, so this brings us to that really profound contrast between the two brothers. It's a contrast that the Apostle Paul uses in the New Testament to talk about righteousness itself.
This is the critical synthesis, especially in Galatians 4. Ishmael, remember, was born 13 years before Isaac. He was born to Hagar, Sarah's slave.
And his birth was what, out of human will?
Exactly. It was Sarah's impatience, Abraham's willingness to go along with it. It represents human planning and really a lack of faith in God's promise. Isaac, on the other hand, is born entirely through God's supernatural power.
So Paul takes this family drama and just elevates it into this huge metaphor. Let's break that down. What does Ishmael represent in Paul's thinking?
Ishmael and his mother, Hagar, they come to represent the law, Mount Sinai, and slavery. They stand for trying to get right with God through your own human works, your own effort.
The idea that you have to do something to earn the promise.
Right. And Isaac and Sarah,
They must be the opposite.
they represent the gospel, Mount Zion, and freedom. This radical idea that righteousness comes purely through faith in God's promise. It's completely separate from human effort. It's what you receive, not what you earn.
That's a huge distinction. So the implication is that any human effort to earn God's favor is like slavery in this analogy. Because for a lot of people, trying hard and being obedient sounds like a good thing.
It sounds good, but Paul argues that if you try to secure the promise through your own effort, that Ishmael impulse, You're basically putting yourself back into slavery. And the sources are really clear on this. It's not a knock on the people themselves, but on the method, the how.
And this whole dichotomy is driven home by a really fascinating detail about their circumcision.
Oh, yes. The ages. Ishmael was circumcised at 13, the age of date or awareness. He could rationally understand the covenant and agree to it.
Guys.
Isaac was circumcised at 8 days old, before he even knew what was happening. It symbolizes a super rational bond, a relationship that goes beyond natural understanding.
So Isaac's relationship was inherent, but Ishmael's was chosen.
That's a good way to put it.
But, even though Ishmael isn't the covenant heir, the story doesn't just abandon him. When he and Hagar are sent away into the wilderness, into Beersheba.
No, it's a crucial, really humanizing part of the story. It shows God's compassion. When they're cast out and they're running out of water, the text says God heard the voice of the lad.
He hears Ishmael.
He hears Ishmael. An angel reassures Hagar and promises to make him a great nation too. It shows that God keeps his word, even to the son born outside the direct covenant line. God hears, God acts, and he provides.
And that compassion, that provision, just makes the very next chapter, Genesis 22, so much more jarring.
Yeah.
After 25 years of waiting, after the miracle, the story shifts from fulfillment to absolute horror.
The language is so spare, so direct. God tells Abraham, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love.
Whom you love.
And go to the region of Mariah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering. And here's a detail for you. That's the very first time the word love appears in the entire Bible.
Wow. It's placed there strategically to maximize the shock.
Absolutely. God is explicitly defining the magnitude of the demand by targeting the one person Abraham loves most on earth.
And we should be clear here, the sources define this as a test, right? Not a temptation.
A very important distinction. Theologically, God doesn't tempt anyone to do evil. The test was for the benefit of the observer, for us, to demonstrate the quality of Abraham's faith.
But focusing just on the theology, you risk missing the human cost of that 3-day journey. Abraham lived in Beersheba, and Mariah, Jerusalem, was about 50 miles north.
50 miles, 3 days of walking, 3 days of silence next to the child he loved, the child that promised. You can only imagine the internal battle raging in Abraham's heart.
He was walking toward the complete destruction of the very promise he'd waited 25 years for.
With no script, no precedent. He just had raw faith married to simple obedience.
How does someone even justify that to themselves for 3 days?
The sources suggest he was leaning on his past experience. He had seen God create life where it was impossible, so he must have reasoned God could also restore life, even from the dead. That hope must have been the only thing keeping him going.
And we often picture Isaac as, a little boy being led along. But that's not right, is it?
Not at all. This is a huge point. Rabbinic and scholarly estimates, they place Isaac's age somewhere between 25 and 37 years old. He was a grown man.
So he wasn't a passive child who had to be bound.
He was a willing participant, a willing sacrifice. He was strong enough to carry the wood for his own execution.
Wow.
He knew what a burnt offering involved. And when he asked his father that heartbreaking question, the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb? Abraham's reply is just intensely prophetic.
God himself will provide the lamb.
Exactly. And that's what leads Abraham to name the place Jehovah-Jireh, the Lord will provide. But he uses a future tense. He's looking ahead.
This whole chapter is just a nexus point for theological language.
It really is. Genesis 22 introduces 3 crucial words for the first time in the whole Bible. First, as we said, the word love. Second, the word worship, which means to bow down, to lie prostrate. And third, the word lamb, which becomes the defining term for a substitutionary sacrifice.
And the geography of it all just seals the prophetic nature of the story. Mariah, you said, means Yahweh displays himself.
It does. And we know from later in the Bible, this isn't some random hill. This is the exact location where King Solomon builds the first temple.
And tradition identifies the very peak of Mount Moriah as Calvary.
Calvary, where the rock outcroppings are said to look like a skull. This links Abraham's journey to an event some 2,000 years later, when the ultimate Lamb of God would be sacrificed at that very spot.
The parallels between Isaac and Jesus are just so direct. Let's just touch on a couple of the strongest ones.
I think the willingness and the outcome are the biggest. Both Isaac and Jesus were deeply loved by their fathers. Both carried their own wood up that hill.
And crucially, both willingly submitted to their father's will. They were adults. They could have resisted.
And of course, the reversal of death is the ultimate parallel. Isaac was brought back from the dead figuratively when the ram was provided.
And Jesus was brought back literally.
Right. And for both of them, the next major event is securing a bride, Rebecca for Isaac and the church for Jesus. The story is clearly pointing ahead.
But before we wrap up, we have to address the really difficult part for modern readers, the whole issue of human sacrifice.
Yes, this is the messy part we have to confront. The reality is human sacrifice was practiced in the ancient Near East, even later in ancient Israel. We know kings like Ahaz and Manasseh passed their sons through fire.
And what's so challenging about Genesis 22 is that Abraham is actually praised for his willingness to do it.
He is. This is where you get that famous philosophical challenge from Immanuel Kant, who asked, how can you know that such an extreme, ethically awful command is actually divine? Shouldn't you just assume it's a deception?
It's a profound question, moral responsibility versus absolute obedience.
It is. The traditional interpretation is that the story's ending, the ram in the thicket, is God's definitive rejection of human sacrifice. It upholds Abraham's faith in the command, but at the same time it establishes that God does not require the human life.
So the tension is the point. Abraham's faith is validated, but the act itself is rejected.
Precisely. Shifting the focus from human action to divine provision. It's a subtle but really essential move away from the surrounding cultures.
Okay, so let's go back to where this all started and ended, Beersheba. After the drama of Mariah, they go home. What's the significance of that place?
Beersheba is foundational. Its name means the well of the oath. It comes from the Hebrew word for swear, and those 7 lambs Abraham gave to a king named Abimelech to seal a treaty.
It's a place of covenants, of promises.
Exactly. It's a symbol of God's faithfulness to his oaths and the faithfulness people should show each other. It's a grounded, political symbol of peace.
We see both Abraham and his son Isaac making peace treaties there with Abimelech, the king of the Philistines.
And that has a huge prophetic echo. Some sources interpret these treaties as pointing way ahead to an end time when Israel and the Palestinians, whose name comes from Philistia, will finally establish an enduring peace.
So it grounds these eternal promises in real physical peace. And it's at Beersheba, after all this trauma, that Abraham performs one final symbolic act.
He plants a tamarisk tree. And it's just the perfect ending to this story. It's not a flashy miracle. It's a deliberate, grounded act that's totally focused on the future.
What's so special about a tamarisk tree?
Well, they're known for their extreme stamina. They can live for over 100 years in the desert heat, and they provide this really dense shade. So by planting this long-lived tree as a witness to the oath and calling on the name of the everlasting God, El Olam Abraham was showing a vision that wasn't about instant gratification or instant trauma. It was about the very, very long term.
It's the ultimate statement of grounded, enduring faith after the ultimate test of faith.
It is. Here's a man who scared down the unthinkable, yet he comes home to plant shade and rest for generations he might never even meet. It embodies a faith that is enduring and quiet and focused on an eternal perspective.
So this deep dive has really shown that this whole narrative is, it's less about one terrifying day on a mountain and much more about the long, complex nature of God's commitments. We see promises fulfilled miraculously, demanding ultimate faith.
But those same promises ultimately require a return to these grounded, practical acts of peace and stability.
Right.
The central tension we navigated is still key. That contrast between the ordinary way, the human way of Ishmael, and the supernatural way of promise and faith with Isaac. We're invited to trust the God who hears us, the God who acts, and the God whose timing might require 25 years of patience.
And here's the final thought for you to take with you. Consider the significance of that tamarisk tree. Abraham was willing to sacrifice his most treasured son on command. Yet, immediately after, he takes the time to plant a tree that offers shade and rest for the future. So what does it mean for you to engage in acts of enduring, long-term faithfulness, acts that provide shade and rest for people you may never know, all with the knowledge that God's faithfulness is an enduring, grounded reality?
A great question to end on.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.